Hello, education lovers. School is back in session, and so are we. Welcome to Big Ideas in Education, back from our summer hiatus, and so excited to share some inspirational and innovational, I don't know if that's a word, but I just made it a word, education stories with you. Ryan Corelli here from Doral College, joined by Dr. Sarah Boulos-Fye from Somerset Academy. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Ryan. Hello, everyone.
And always a treat to be joined by Michael Hernandez of Academica. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Ryan. Hey, Sarah. And hey, everybody.
Man, this is exciting. I missed you guys. I'm so excited to get back into these stories. Over the summer, every time I see a story, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to talk about this on the show. Oh, the show's on hiatus. And
we've never taken such a long break. So this is the longest hiatus we've ever had.
And excited to be back, just full of stories. And I know, Sarah, you got a good one for us. Why don't you get us started?
I do. So back to school, and some high school students are figuring out that there is a very important component of their high school career in front of them, the high stakes world of SAT and ACT testing. I know we've talked on the show before about how many more universities are doing away with these testing requirements, but the truth remains that the majority still do require sitting for one or more of these exams, and the results may have pretty big implications for high school students. So what can you do to ease the mental burden of a day that probably weighs pretty heavily on your mind? Well, the U.S. News and World Report offers 8 tips that go slightly beyond eating a good breakfast, as we've all heard.
That's all we had. That's all they gave us.
That's all they told us, right? Eat a good breakfast, get a good night's sleep. Number 1, ensure that all your materials are ready. The day before the test, go through and make sure all of the items you will need are ready to go in one obvious place. Don't be like someone who may be hosting this podcast right now and forget to bring your driver's license. They ask for picture ID. You need a calculator, a special one. Don't be scrambling the morning of the test. Be ready the day before. 2, do a little physical exercise. Countless studies have proven that physical exercise is a remarkably effective antidote to stress. Harvard University Medical School, Massachusetts declares that exercise, quote, has a unique capability to exhilarate and relax, to provide stimulation and calm, to counter depression and dissipate stress. The Mayo Clinic in Minnesota agrees, stating that exercise reduces the negative effects of stress while stimulating the positive ones like increased alertness. As an educator, I can't tell you how many times I've asked my students if they want to go do a few jumping jacks or push-ups right before a big test. Usually they laugh, then realize I'm serious, then go do it, and they come back with a big smile on their face and they feel ready to go. Number 3, eat a filling, familiar breakfast.
There it is.
Okay, so I guess we couldn't avoid this one. We've all heard it.
I'm waiting for the one expert to be like, you know what? Just forget about breakfast.
No
just
breakfast,
ditch it.
right?
Who needs it?
Well, I was going to say that as an educator, I've had so many students tell me they're too nervous to eat the day of the test, or maybe they're not a breakfast person. And I would always tell them, that's fine. Just bring some snacks with you, something that's easy to transport. You know, you don't want like a big messy snack, but you never know when hunger will hit. And if you're anything like me, hangry is not a pretty color and it will not do your scores any favors. 4 is to look back at your starting point. So instead of cramming the night before, focus on how much you've grown since the beginning of this process. You've learned so much. This positive mindset can make a big difference, and cramming only increases anxiety. Next, try connecting with an encouraging friend. Make a plan to go grab lunch or take a walk after the test so you have something to look forward to. Squeeze something. This is something I had not heard before, but apparently the benefit of squeezing is that it releases some kind of energy. It also induces you to relax, said Dr. David Posen, a stress expert, motivational speaker, and author. I also thought when I read this that if you're a fidgeter, this might help release some of that tension, right? Of just sitting in that silent room for like 5 hours. So bringing something to play with or squeeze would be helpful. Controlling your breathing. So it might sound cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. It works. Try breathing in for an 8 count, holding it for 4, and releasing for another 8. Using this to just clear your mind for a moment can have some really significant impacts in slowing down your heart rate and helping you focus. And finally, put the test in perspective. For some of us, that can send us spiraling because they think of all the reasons why this is such an important day. But just remember that if you need to, you can test again. Super scoring, or taking the scores from the best subsections results, regardless of when you took the test, is now common practice for the College Board, the makers of the SAT, and for the ACT test. And if the cost of the test is a concern, students who receive free and reduced lunch can request test fee waivers from their school guidance counselors so that they can test for free. As educators, I think it's helpful to share with our students that we have all been through what they are going through, and maybe even share some of our blunders, like someone who forgot their driver's license, drove all the way back to their house, and realized it was in the car the whole time.
No.
Or the person who had the flu and fell asleep during the entire science section of the ACT. And they still went on to receive advanced degrees and have a really bright future. Yeah, those were definitely both me.
Wow.
It's going to be okay. And hopefully these tips make it a little easier.
And just so we're all clear, this is Dr. Sarah Bulos
That's right.
Fye. So, Ivy League Dr. Sarah Bulos Fye. It all turned out okay.
It
Driver's
worked
license
out.
Blunder notwithstanding. But
Yeah.
to me, I think that's the most
One day when you're
important
16
thing.
years old should not be the reason that your entire future goes in one direction or the other.
It's the most important piece of advice to impart to students is that very last one you brought up about perspective. And we've all been there. It seems like many moons ago for us, but we've all been there. When you're 16, 17 years old, you have no perspective. You see this test in front of you, and it seems like the be-all and end-all. And no matter how many grown-ups who've been through that experience tell you this is just one thing on your journey, it doesn't define you. No matter what happens today, you will still accomplish great things in your life, and it's not going to destroy your life if it doesn't go well, nor will it make you like immensely successful if you crush this test. We still don't believe them, and we ascribe so much importance to this test, even as the entirety of higher education is diminishing the importance of this test every year. Fewer and fewer colleges are even requiring this test. We're allowing super scoring, so it's not as high stakes. So we're seeing higher education tell you, we think that we don't get a complete picture of a student from this exam anymore. And so we should be expecting students to not think that they're going to get a complete picture by taking this test either.
That's right. It's so important. And I think that in general, the whole world of high stakes testing has become, in a lot of ways, much more punitive on students. And it happens at a much younger age. I've had debates with other educators about how we use test scores starting very, very young, right? I mean, there are tests that students take very early on that determine, which coursework they can get into and what they can't. And, as we're getting into a new set of standards here in the state of Florida this year, we're all back to school with the Florida best standards versus what we had before. I went to several seminars over the summer talking with other educators and counselors and administrators, and we were arguing, what doors are open for our kids and what doors are closed for our kids from a very young age, and how can we help them to shine in other ways that don't necessarily get reflected on a test they take one day. So it's definitely something that I hope that not only do we say these things just to ease our students' minds, but that we as educators continue to advocate for other avenues to demonstrate proficiency for our students, because one day and one test, again, should not be the decider of a kid's future.
Absolutely. It's definitely affected my own teaching practice. Every year that I teach, I rely less and less on exam-based assessments. My class used to have like an exam where the students would sit for, 2 hours. I'd watch over them like a hawk while they're bubbling in answers and freaking out the whole time. And now in the most recent class I did in spring at Doral College, no tests like that. Everything was essays. It was oral examinations. It was alternative forms of assessment, because I was finding more and more that the students who I knew were star performers were just, prone to having a bad test day and not show. And this exam that I was creating was a terrible method of to allow them to demonstrate proficiency. And so I've relied less on it. Higher education has relied less on these kind of assessments. And so I'm hoping this just becomes part of a general trend in education, because I don't want to stress kids out. Mike, You've always seemed to me like the coolest customer I know, like super even keeled. I imagine when Mike goes into a test, like he knows how to regulate himself. Like, did any of these tips that Sarah brought up speak to you? Like, yep, this is what Mike does when he walks into an exam.
Pretty much all of it. I'll add my own personal tip, which was something that I thought of myself back when I was 17. Um, I didn't want to get distracted by, going with a bunch of friends or going to a familiar place. I actually wanted to go to a place that was going to kind of get me inspired and get me excited to go there. So I looked for local universities that were doing the SAT exam, and I did it at universities that I knew that my friends would either not go out of their way to do,
Yeah.
or just not wake up at that time to do it, right? So I chose it on a Saturday morning at the University of Miami, and I did it. It was a great experience, to be honest, and I just felt like I can just kind of relax and just focus on the test. And I think the only other thing I can also give as a great tip is, it's not a one and done. At
Mhm.
least I think that hasn't changed, right? It's not a
Right.
one and done. You can do it more than once, and the best score will prevail.
Yep.
So if you have those nervous and those jitters on the first test, just knock it off and take it in as the experience. And more times than not, you do better in the second test. So those would be the only things that I would add to that. But they were great tips, to be honest.
Well, the only danger to driving too far away to taking your exam is if you forget your driver's license and then you have to go all the way back.
I thought that exact thing. I thought, unless you're like some people, but then again, it was in the car the whole time. So.
Yeah. Well, I drove 40 miles to take the LSAT when I was applying to law school because of exactly what Mike brought up. I was so afraid of just running into anybody from college that I was like, let me just go far, far away. And it actually did make me feel a lot less stressed. So I completely understand.
And then you have like me when my anxiety is like, but I'm going to get there and not know where to go.
Just
you
follow
gotta
all the other sad or stressed
thyself,
out people.
Right? Know thyself. Know what's going to work for you.